What is going on, all you awesome super aficionados? This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast. I'm Nick with my co-host
James,
Eric,
and last but not least,
Ruben, you already know.
good to have you back, man. It's been a minute.
Hey man, it feels good. It feels good. But I see you guys been holding it down. That's what's up. And then Eric, can you main guy in the mix? You know, that's what's up. That's
Fit
what's up.
in nicely, fit in well.
Yeah, exactly. Like that shirt too. That was awesome.
thanks, dude. Thanks.
How you guys doing this week?
been a busy week,
Definitely.
to say the least. It's been a very busy week. Productive but busy.
Yeah, I've been catching up on some superhero shows though. Again, I was out with family last weekend, so I got to catch up on some comic books too.
Mm-hmm.
But been watching a lot of Jupiter's Legacy lately, so I think we're gonna touch on that later. But I'm liking it so far. Trying to finish it out.
Definitely. How about you, Ruby?
Yeah, I've been doing well this week. It actually has been a little busy for me on my end too, just with school and taking care of things I gotta take care of. But you know, I always make time to either buy comics, read comics, and all that stuff. You know, I have my things behind me, a bunch of beautiful books. You know, just a little bit of everything. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I'm doing well, man. I haven't, like I said, been busy. I haven't read a lot this week, but I have been buying. So it's still, I just love it, I guess. As a collector, I love doing what I do.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's been pretty interesting for me too, because this is actually something I shared with Jimmy. A lot of my coworkers, I've actually been getting them into comics, which is pretty cool. Because I was telling a lot of them that I was reading The Batman Who Laughs, and they're asking, well, what's The Batman Who Laughs? So I explained to it that he's a combination of Batman and the Joker, and then they look him up, and they're just, on their phone. Oh, damn. Like, there's already been like 3 or 4 of my coworkers who are reading The Batman Who Laughs. And I went to a comic book store with 3 of my coworkers, and 2 of them bought comics, and they were asking me, hey, what should I buy? This is a character I like. I felt, like that photo of Batman on the Mobius chair when he's like ascended to God level because of the knowledge. That's like how I felt. I felt like sitting on that chair, like. But it's been cool, man. It's really awesome to see people who never really had an affinity or any kind of appreciation for comics, but because of everything going on now and so many characters and so many stories that they're seeing, have that be the inspiration to, hey, I want to read more. I want to learn more about the comics and more about the origins, more about these characters. So it's been pretty cool from that standpoint that more people are getting interested and have a little bit of fascination with comics.
That's good. That's
awesome.
Happy to see.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, let's dive into today with the news that has developed over the last week. It's been kind of interesting. I didn't expect it. Well, I guess it is. It's when you think about it, it wasn't expected, but it's a little bit obvious considering how much this show cost to make. Apparently, it was rumored to cost $200 million to produce, and that is that Netflix officially canceled Jupiter's Legacy after 1 season, even though they greenlit the Super Crook spinoff that's gonna be about the villains that inhabit that world. They greenlit that. So, what are your guys' thoughts on them canceling Jupiter's Legacy after 1 season?
It's typical of Netflix.
Yeah.
Always cancel all of their stuff early. I could have told you that $200 million for that show was way over budget and was not reasonable. Even if that show was successful, it would still have a hard time recouping $200 million in production value.
Right.
Netflix is known for, they usually go for 3 seasons and then they don't want to pay people anymore. They just cut it off. So knowing that they overspent on it in the first place is not a surprise that they're cutting off the first season. And as is typical of Netflix, they're going to make a spinoff anyway. Let's hope that they budget it better this time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go for it.
I was gonna say, I think it's pretty crazy that they canceled it because they had that really big Miller World Netflix deal. They purchased the rights to all those characters already. So it could be that they're just canceling it for now, and they're gonna do some of the other spin-off series, some of the other superheroes, and then bring them back, like the second season further down the line. But so far, I mean, I don't know if Netflix has any other dark superhero shows.
I mean,
produced by them. But I mean, Amazon's been killing it with The Boys, with Invincible, and I think this is the first big one that I know that Netflix had done, and for it to fall short that quickly, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the show. I ain't gonna lie. I thought it was pretty good. But like Jimmy was saying, 200. Oh, that budget was way too much for what it actually looked like.
Yeah.
But I do think it's pretty crazy that they're canceling after one. I understand that they're gonna do spin-offs, which is understandable. Who isn't doing that nowadays? But why so soon? Maybe after the second season. Well, they did say there was not a lot of viewerships on that, but I mean it's Netflix, so you can't. I don't think you can't compare it to TV ratings. It's something different. But like you guys say, typical of Netflix. But normally they're the ones that like to pick up shows that get canceled. So who knows if there might be another studio that might want to pick up on it if they sell the rights to them, or like you said, he might hold on to it. And do the spin-offs and then reintroduce them down the line.
That's the interesting thing about this too, because Mark Millar, he seems to be pretty confident that they're gonna pick it up somewhere down the line, whether in some kind of form. He didn't say whether it would be they would do multiple seasons on it, but that they expect them to be back in some kind of capacity. And then there's also the opportunity for the cast to make guest appearances for Super Crooks. But it was not shocking in that sense when you find out that the budget was reported to be $200 million. And I think with also that too, it didn't get the viewership, get the ratings, and it didn't really get that reception or that draw. So I think it was just easy for them to be like, okay, let's cut this. How much money this cost to produce, all the money that was going to the cast. It was a pretty star-studded cast. Yeah, so because the common consensus among most people I talked to, they didn't really care for it. They said, oh, it was boring. It started off okay, but then it kind of got boring in the middle, or when they got their powers, or how they got their powers and everything. But I thought it had potential. I could see where the boring aspect came into play, but I thought it was one of those things like it had potential. And when you have a star-studded cast like this had, I thought they was at least going to go a couple seasons. But with all that in mind,
here's my problem with it. It was like, with Netflix's record, is that really the best place to be building like a large extended universe that's supposed to go for years? I just have doubts about Netflix's ability to stay the course, being that they cancel popular, well-rated shows to be cheap. So I just like the idea of an extended universe. I mean, I hope they do it right, but like I have a hard time seeing Netflix actually sticking the course, given how they cancel everything left and right. That's a big commitment. A whole universe, multiple shows.
Right.
Yeah.
But, right.
Yeah. And I think they should have. I don't know. They should have done better with the show itself. So far, I was saying I like it, but it's more like nostalgia from having read those books. Like, but when you're talking about the Millerverse, like you're talking about Kick-Ass, you're talking about Kingsman, and those movies, like they killed it. But also, if you look at those movies, they like dive headfirst into the darkness of that universe, of those worlds. Whereas I feel like Jupiter's Legacy, the show, is kind of dancing around it, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, I'm like, if you don't know the story, it's a son and a daughter having to meet the legacy of their parents who are superheroes, and all the stuff they're going through. It's very dramatic in that sense. And I think in the like first episode, there's one scene where it's very like gruesome and violent for like 2-3 minutes, and that's it. And it almost felt kind of like one of the like CW shows more than a Kick-Ass or a Kingsman. So, or even a Wanted, right? Wanted was also a Millerverse story. Yeah, so it's ridiculous that they're canceling it so soon, but maybe it's kind of them readjusting to what the feedback was so far. I mean, even with that said, though, I think they have from the Millerverse, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 upcoming films already in production, and 3 series, one of which is an anime series. So all in the same universe, already in production. So it looks like they're still committed to this. Maybe it's just this one show that they're gonna put on pause for now, because I guess Netflix has this thing also where if it doesn't hit right away, they stop producing it and move on to the next thing. Exactly. I mean, you've seen it with so many shows, right? So many shows get 1 or 2 seasons and then they're just gone. Yeah,
they're gonna put it right back up on the shelf and leave it for a little bit.
And then moving on from that, we actually had our first reveal of the updated suit for Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods. And we also had a little bit of a teaser trailer. So what do you guys think of the look of the updated suit for Shazam?
I like it.
So much better.
Yeah, so much better.
You can tell they probably held back a little bit on the first one because they didn't know if it was going to be a hit or not. They made that money. Yeah. They've got more money to invest in this second. Well, they did have more money to invest in the second one, I'm assuming. And sometimes the costume is what matters, which makes it a hit or miss. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if they can have a good actor, but if the costume doesn't look good, then it might, I might be a little bit of judgmental on that. But other than that, I thought it was pretty cool. It's I want to see more. I'll tell you that. I want to see more.
Yeah.
And I really like that I still like how they bring that, that little kid vibe to it. Still a little youngin, a little teenager, where I don't know if he's gotten the hang of his powers better than his first time off, but obviously it's all the experience, as you keep going along, it's experience. But I just want to see like I said, I want to see more. That teaser wasn't enough. I want to see the actual trailer and some.
I thought the suit looked pretty good. I mean, kind of like what Ruben said, I kind of feel like Shazam, especially with this property, it's like DC's opportunity to do something a little bit more Marvel-like, where in terms of the relatability of the characters, or having it be skew a little bit younger and not so dark and serious as the rest of their material. I think the costume looks good. I think it's an improvement over what we saw last time. And I'm looking forward to it. I think the movie has a really good cast, for one thing.
Definitely. And it was interesting, too, because most people actually agreed. We ran a poll on comparing the two suits from the first Shazam movie to this one, and 64% said it was better to 36% who said that they liked the suit from the first film. And I think I got to agree with the people on this one. It just looks more sleeker. And I think one of the biggest complaints I had about the first suit was that you could tell it was so padded. It just looked very unnatural. Like, I understand he didn't have the time to prepare, and his whole thing was he had to just bulk as much as possible and put on as much weight mass as possible, and he wasn't going to look as defined.
It's very obvious.
Yeah. There was just certain times you could tell it was just so
question the 36% who thinks that was better. Who are you?
I wonder too. I'm like, it looks, but the suit, this one looks way sleeker. They didn't overdo it with the padding, which he looks more natural in that sense. And also too, I really just like the design of the lightning bolt. It looks more similar to what they're going for with Black Adam. That's probably why they had switched it around a little bit to resemble his lightning bolt. And I really even just like the gauntlets. The gauntlets kind of remind me more of Wonder Woman too. And you see, I just think that the suit looks way better overall. It looks sleeker, and I just can't wait to see it in live action, honestly, and see it on the big screen.
Yeah, big screen.
I think it's interesting you brought up the fact that he had to bulk up for the role, because he didn't have much time in the first Shazam. So I think in their defense, like, he had so much more time now, like he's had years now to be able to bulk up and look more accurate to the role. And we kind of touched on this before, right, on the last episode. But in their defense, because of the type of movie it is, because it's so like campy and family oriented, I don't think the first costume was that bad. I think it kind of fit with the ridiculousness of the movie, where it's like it almost looked like a child just got muscles out of nowhere, and it looked that ridiculous, like very cartoonish. So I think it kind of it didn't really take away from the movie itself, but comparing the costumes themselves, yes, obviously the second one looks much better, much more accurate to the comics. And it's really cool that you brought up the fact about the gauntlets looking similar to Wonder Woman's, because if I'm correct, Shazam's powers, they're like Greek gods' powers.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, of course.
So and so who knows? Maybe we'll see a cameo of Wonder Woman in Shazam. That'd be really dope.
Yeah,
I think that'd be cool.
My thing was, I think it was more making that connection towards the whole Greek mythology that inhabits the DC universe. Because obviously Shazam derives his powers from the Greek gods, and obviously Wonder Woman is a demigod and the daughter of Zeus, and everything that obviously involving Greek mythology connected to Wonder Woman and Shazam. It's just really cool to see kind of like they were being smart with that little detail and telling more of that story and more of that connection to the grander universe as a whole.
Yeah,
I feel like that's what I loved about Snyder's Justice League. It's like the first time that I ever felt like somebody actually understood that the DC universe is the same universe as Greek mythology, or that it inhabits the same world. I think
the mythos behind it.
The mythos behind it. So I hope to see a lot more of that in DC movies in the future.
Yep,
definitely. So make sure you guys follow us on IG at Heroes and Mutants Podcast. We're going to be posting updates throughout the week. It'll be your chance to vote in our polls and answer any questions that we have. With that being said, we're going to jump to our next segment. And this is actually something we filmed a while back. We actually had to re-record because the audio was so bad from that episode. So if you guys partook in this poll and was wondering why that episode never got posted, we apologize greatly for that. But we are going to dive into what we call Superhero Showdown.
All right.
And on today's episode, it's going to be a battle between the two kings of hell to see who reigns supreme and who is going to be that ultimate angel of hell. Is it going to be Spawn, or is it going to be Ghost Rider? Let's dive into figuring that out. We will go first with Spawn.
Okay, this isn't really that hard to figure out, and it's a very simple case. So let's get started. All right,
let them know.
A little backstory on Spawn. Spawn was a black ops agent named Al Simmons who worked for the government, worked for a corrupt CIA led by Jason Wynn. What's interesting about Al Simmons is that he was already a powerful human being in the same way that Batman is a powerful human being in the DC universe. Within the universe of
it always goes back to Batman.
Oh shit! Ruben holding up the first issue of Spawn.
Oh, Spawn!
So jealous.
That is a wonderful item.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna need to break in and steal it one of these days or something.
I actually had that, and mine was stolen years ago. So
that's the worst.
About that, I remember the first. I walked into a comic book shop. They had the first issue of Spawn. I was with my dad. It's like, get me that, please, get me that. And but yeah. Anyways, he was a black ops agent. He's highly intelligent. He's fluent in 10 different languages. He's mastered, 12 different fighting styles. Let me look up what they are.
This is before his powers.
Yeah, before his powers. Right, so 13 martial arts, including judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, kung fu, jeet kune do, and I apologize if I F these names up.
Bruce Lee's martial art.
Taekwondo, boxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, hapkido, Muay Thai, ninjutsu, and American karate. He speaks 10 different languages, including Japanese, Spanish, French, Chinese, Italian, Portuguese, Latin, Arabic, Persian, and Russian. He was an exceptional acrobat and athlete in his youth, and he basically honed himself to physical and mental perfection. He's like somebody who truly believes that he was doing the right thing, truly believes that he was on the side of the good guys. But in reality, he had a lot of flaws. He didn't recognize the violent nature of what he was doing. And I think he kind of clouded his judgment. So was so convinced that he was a good person that he refused to question the authority that he was taking orders from. He also had a couple character flaws, like he actually hit his wife a couple of times where he beat her. Something that he regrets a lot in the afterlife. But he is a fascinating person as a human being. So before we even get to the superpowers that he has, which are ridiculous, he is immense government training. He's a gifted acrobat, and I think that tactical intelligence that he has is important to why he's so successful. And even in the comics, because his powers are finite, even though he could kind of replenish them by drawing on different elements, he still chooses to use his more practical skills as much as possible, so he wastes as little of his supernatural energy as he can. So before we even get to that, like I said, he's already an amazing human being in terms of physical perfection and mental perfection. He obviously had a lot of character flaws. He has a symbiotic suit. He weighs about 450 pounds. I don't know if you guys know that or not. It weighs about 450 pounds.
God damn.
The concept of the suit is that it's actually connected to his central nervous system, and which is why it can react even when he's not acting. So let's say he's asleep and he's being attacked. The suit can act to protect him. The suit can teleport him involuntarily many times when he's in situations of danger. Whenever the suit
Like Venom
might get overpowered, it takes it away. He has those cool ass chains that just come out that come out and they bite, and they can do all kinds of different things. His shroud, I would like to call it a cape, but it's actually a shroud. Yeah, that's what it's called.
I still say cape. I'm gonna say cape until the end of time.
In the comic books, they refer to that shroud that kind of envelops him, and that shroud is able to like strike and impale people and cut people in half and do all kinds of wild stuff. And I'm not really crazy about the 1997 Spawn adaptation, and I think some of the CGI has dated. But the perfect example of how cool his cape looks, there's still that one scene where he's brooding, as dark superheroes will do, brooding on a gothic structure while his cape flows out, and you could see it moving, and you could see it as a living organism. It's a really cool image. If you ever go back and revisit that really bad movie. So his powers are limited, though. They're denoted by a countdown. It starts at 9999. That's the full amount of his powers, and when it gets down to 0, it marks his final descent into hell. However, what kind of counters that is that he can feed off of psychic energy to gain power. It feeds off of the evil energy of the physical world. So if he's ever running off of power, he can actually draw energy from evil people. The ambient evil of animals, including carrion insects, wolves, coyotes, common house cats, though every time you see the house cats that he draws power from, they're always drawn as black cats. Of course, a very typical of a story like this. There's these fictional rat-like rodents that he can draw from. There's bats, red foxes, mongoose, and he can actually draw his powers from the darkest parts of big cities, including New York City, Los Angeles, Detroit, and most recently in Spawn Resurrection, Albuquerque.
There's a lot of evil in all those cities.
Including with corruption and evil. His organs are regenerative. He has psychic link, superhuman senses, telekinesis, cosmic awareness. Now that is something that you never hear any superhero having. Cosmic awareness. I don't.
Spidey sense.
Oh, that's not.
It's such a Daredevil senses, radar sense.
Yeah.
He also has an ability to feel or be aware of the pain, misery, and hatred of everybody around him. So he is aware subconsciously when someone is murdered, and he actually has the ability, and not necessarily ability because it's not always a gift, but he actually feels the anguish of mankind in every fiber in his being. Because his power is derived from the dark side, and it's derived from evil. He can feel the pain, the anguish of mankind, and he draws his energy off of it. He has the ability to transform time. He's really hard to kill. The only way that you can really kill Spawn is to behead him. And even then, that doesn't work. You have to behead him with a weapon that's either from hell or heaven. So if your weapon isn't ordained by heaven or does not bathe in the powers of hell, you're never going to decapitate this guy. All of his abilities are, I don't know how to, all of his abilities, like, it's weird with Spawn because they say that he has this finite power source to try to like balance out the overpowered aspects of his character, but it really is kind of a cop-out, isn't it? Because if he can draw energy from anywhere, it's just basically a never-ending source of energy that he has. He's basically a Superman with supernatural powers. Here's some of his other abilities. He can resurrect the dead, fire blast of necroplasmic energy. He can teleport, which I mentioned earlier, flame breather, transmutation, manipulation of the elements, shape shifting, flight. He can talk to animals like Dr. Doolittle. He can read minds. He reads minds. See, Aquaman can talk to fish, but Spawn can talk to all of them. Reads minds, invisibility, portal creation, time manipulation, soul manipulation, reality warping, regeneration. It's and the ability to cure the sick. That's another thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that Todd McFarlane said that is some of his powers were actually inspired by Jesus, the ability to resurrect the dead, the ability to
Of course.
do a lot of these different things. So he's basically like Jesus. And according to a lot of different sources, you know what Spawn's biggest limitation is as far as his powers? His imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Which
that sounds familiar.
Which basically means he can imagine it. He can probably find some way to do it. If the man can manipulate time, he can go fight with God and the devil and take them on. He can do all these things. So his biggest limitation is what he can imagine that he can do.
Exactly.
And like I said, and all of that is on top of all the training, all the intelligence he has as a human being, somebody who worked for the government, somebody who is one of the who in the comic books was like the top government assassin in the world. So he knows all the tricks of the trade. He knows how to use a gun. He knows how to use explosives. He's absurd. He's overpowered, and I love him for it. And I think he's
Just to put things in perspective for the audience to understand just how OP, how grandstanding this character truly is. I saw what somebody had said in a YouTube video that really put things into perspective of just how powerful he is and how quickly someone can understand. If you took the Punisher and you took Venom and you took Doctor Strange and then you took Ghost Rider, you combined all those characters together and you get Spawn. That's probably the easiest, most simplified way to explain this character, who he is, what he can do, and just how incredibly freaking OP this character truly is.
And I think as far as superheroes go, I think him, and I'm sorry, I know you always tell me I bring it back to Batman. I know I always
We're used to it. It's okay.
Guilty as charged. But is the only other character, and this is funny because this is one of my other top three comic book characters is Spawn, Batman, Spider-Man. Those are my three favorites. I like those aspects in the superheroes, the relatability of it, the struggle that he goes through, the fact that he's a very imperfect person who tries to do the right thing. And I think that the story, I think what makes it compelling is his realization that he was wrong in life and his mission to try to right the wrongs or become a better person. And I think that's a very unique form of storytelling because he's trying to become a better person by using the powers of darkness, the powers of evil, trying to kind of use the devil's creation like kind of against him. So there's a kind of relatability, and of course his tragic love for his wife Wanda, who, to be honest, he was not a perfect husband. He did things that were wrong and misbehaved, but he did truly love her, and she did truly love him. And I think the Al Simmons and Wanda storyline is really compelling. So Spawn is fantastically overpowered. He looks cool as hell. I mean, look at this artwork for those who can see it. This is just one of the coolest looking characters. I mean, this is overkill. That's a villain. But this is the coolest looking characters ever. But none of that would matter if his storyline, if his backstory, if the mythology behind it was not compelling. And I think that the mythology behind it is compelling. I like how it brings different religious level storytelling in it. I love the battle between the angels and demons, and it's great. I'm a big Spawn fan. I'm a Spawn freak.
Well, it's pretty hard.
Hey Jimmy, was that issue number 8 or 10?
Yeah, I do have issue number 8. Issue number 8.
I recognized it. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
My bad, Nick. What were you?
I got issue number 2 right here to match your issue number 1.
It's pretty hard to follow up a character like that who's just so grandstanding and OP. But I think the challenger in the red corner over there has something to say about all of that. And has a pretty impressive resume to back it up. Maybe. Well, I mean, we'll see. But so the ghostwriter we're going to focus on is Johnny Blaze. And he has a very tragic backstory that rivals Al Simmons' backstory, give or take a little bit. So a little bit of info and insight onto Johnny Blaze, who he is. He was the son of motorcycle stuntman Barton Blaze and Naomi Cale, and both starred in a motorcycle stunt show with Craig Crash Simpson. Naomi abandoned Barton and Johnny, taking their two children, Barbara and Danny Ketch, who Danny would later become a ghostwriter also, and it was later retconned to Johnny and Danny were brothers. It wasn't revealed at the time, but was revealed later. And she took the two kids with her, leaving them in the care of Frances Ketch, whose name they would obviously take. Naomi had a reason, though, as she just didn't up and abandon her family just because. She was aware that the Cale bloodline was embedded with the Medallion of Power, crafted by one of Zarathos, and that's the demon that is bonded to Johnny as the ghostwriter persona. One of Zarathos' foes, the blood to house the essences of the original spirits of vengeance. And Naomi's ancestor, Noble Cale, was transformed into a spirit of vengeance. The ghostwriter and Mephisto tried to fail to corrupt. He was transformed into that original spirit of vengeance, the ghostwriter. And then Mephisto tried and failed to corrupt Noble and set his sights on the rest of the Cale clan, watching them from then on as the first noble of every generation manifested their power. And Johnny was deeply affected by the abandonment of his mother, so much that it caused him to repress many memories that he had of her and her siblings. And tragedy would further strike Johnny as Barton was killed in a stunt accident that gone wrong. And at this time, Crash and his family had gotten pretty close to Johnny, so they decided to formally adopt Johnny. And because of him repressing his memories, he actually forgot a lot about his mother. And because they wanted to hide the truth of his painful past, they created a less tragic backstory for him, telling him that his mother, Clara Blaze, had died. And Johnny grew up happily during this time. It was probably the happiest had ever been with this adopted family. And he even grew close to their daughter, Roxanne, which is kind of weird because they developed a relationship that became less sibling and more romantic, which that dynamic kind of weirded me out a little bit because that's supposed to be your stepsister. And yeah,
got a Luke and Leia thing going on there.
Got a reverse Luke and Leia where they started off as siblings and then became lovers. Yeah, that's a interesting thing. And then Johnny would eventually join the family business, the Crash Simpson Stunt Cycle Extravaganza. And during this time, Johnny and Crash grew closer to each other as Crash taught him the ins and outs of the motorcycle stunt business and teaching him how to ride and perform. And Crash was actually hoping that Johnny would follow his legacy after he was gone. Unfortunately, this happiness was short-lived again, as when Johnny was 15, Mona, his adopted mother, would die while Johnny was practicing a stunt that almost cost him his life. So he harbored a lot of guilt about that also. And on her deathbed, Mona made Johnny promise to give up riding. And after this, Johnny would follow through with that promise when he refused to ride, which caused friction with him and Crash, who was unaware of the promise he made to Mona. And Johnny would come to learn that Crash had developed cancer and was going to die from it, which drove Crash to once again ask Johnny to take over the family show. But Johnny continued to refuse, which disappointed Roxanne. And it was during this time that Johnny because obviously you take somebody who repressed all of his memories so much so that he forgot about his biological mother and forgot about his two siblings and that his mom abandoned the family and took them with her. And then you take into the fact that his biological father had died in a motorcycle accident. Then you take that with he had finally achieved happiness and found happiness with his adopted family. And then the rug gets pulled out from underneath him when Mona dies. And obviously that was an incident that he harbored a lot of guilt over because it was when he was practicing a stunt. And then you take into fact, now he's looking at his adopted father dying and possibly on the verge because he has cancer. So Johnny was only 15, 16 at this time. When you take into the fact of how much tragedy and everything that's happened in Johnny's life and all that sadness, all that, you just really, really feel for Johnny because he had dealt.
I'm just kidding. It was a joke. I'm kidding, Nick. I'm sorry.
Wait, what did you say?
He said boo-hoo.
But just in general, like, it's crazy to think that everything that this character had gone through in this short time, and not even at the age of 18 at this time yet. So obviously, Johnny was unwilling to live with the idea of Crash dying, so he chose to the only alternative that he found, which was to study the occult, hoping to find a mystical way to save his foster father. And the magic that Johnny discovered was a spell that supposedly summoned Satan, but the demon that Johnny raised was in fact Mephisto. And Mephisto and Johnny made a deal which cured Crash of his cancer as long as Johnny promised to serve the demon. And despite their deal, obviously, Crash would die almost instantly after while attempting to set a new world record with a 22-car jump. Johnny was devastated by Crash's loss, obviously, and when confronted by Mephisto exploited a loophole where he revealed that Johnny's deal was for Crash to be cured of cancer, not for him to live. So it's one of those instances where he didn't read the fine print.
Can I pause you right there, Nick? Because I want to add a point to that. This is very relevant to what you're saying.
Of course.
That's another thing that these two characters do have in common. They remind you of the trickery of demons or or Satan. The idea is that they're dishonest and they're liar. I forgot to mention, because I got too excited for a second, that Spawn's whole thing is that when he died and went to hell, his deal with Malbolgia, the devil, was that he would get to see his wife again, so long as he gets to serve as a soldier in Hell's army, somebody who would lead them to the gates of heaven and storm heaven and knock God out. Or that's the idea anyway. But his deal was that he would get to see his wife one more time. And that just sounds like, oh, you're going to get to see your wife. All it meant is that you get to see her. So what he did is he kept him in kind of erased his memory for 5 years, sent him back 5 years after he was dead, so he could see his best friend married to his wife with a child that he was unable to give his wife, no matter how many times they tried. So they're both very, both of their backstories are kind of defined by making deals with demonic forces only to have the rug pulled under them, to only have, realize that it's just a kind of cruel trick on the part of either Satan, Malbolgia, which they call him in Spawn, or Mephisto, the demon in Ghost Rider. That's a cool parallel. I just wanted to.
Of course. And I think this is one of those aspects, like, despite Johnny and Spawn's amazing power and skill set, I think this fact really allows people to relate to them, because it's that very human quality of doing things for your loved one and doing things, anything, because you want to see them again, or you want to, especially with Johnny's case, because Johnny had a very altruistic viewpoint and he had a very altruistic reason for doing what he was doing. And especially because of everything, all that tragedy that had partaken his past, you definitely can resonate and understand, well, it's understandable why a teenager would turn to the occult, because he didn't want to lose his second father figure. And especially after repressing memories of his birth mother and being told that his mom died, and then losing his stepmother. And I think that part just really allows you to resonate and relate to Johnny, because of that fact that it was just somebody who was really trying to do everything he could to save somebody. He wasn't trying to, in the interest of his own greed, he wasn't trying to become a millionaire or buy a mansion or become the best in the world. That's something he just wanted to save his father, save his stepfather.
I think that with those two characters is that the one thing I will say is that Johnny Blaze as a human being was probably a better person than L. Simmons was as a human being, because Johnny Blaze, like you said, there's things about him that was very aspects of his personality that were very altruistic. And while L. Simmons thought he was a good person, he was actually a very violent, bad person at heart. And I don't think he had the same type of altruistic qualities that
exactly
that might make him a more relatable character. But it also makes Spawn's redemption something harder to fight for, because he was actually not a good person.
You're right, definitely. And it was after this, obviously, Johnny would become Mephisto's agent, the Ghost Rider, which he was bonded to the demon Zarathos. And it was actually kind of funny, because in the early editions of the character, back in the day, he would actually transform into Ghost Rider during the nighttime, whenever night would fall. And then it became that whole thing whenever he was in the presence of evil, that was a big thing. And then became to a point where he was just able to control and transform into Ghost Rider at will. But I know you guys are thinking, well, who is Zarathos? What is he? How is it he got bonded to Johnny Blaze? And let's give you some Zarathos facts right now. As explained in Ghost Rider number 77, the 1973 series, the physical stone body of the demon Zarathos had lain inert and inanimate beneath the earth for eons until his spirit was summoned by Native American tribe sorcerer named Kanutu to help his tribe. Zarathos was then offered a steady supply of souls to consume in exchange for his aid in vanquishing enemies of his sorcerer's tribe and for offering his might in their service. And this alliance proves mutually beneficial, flourishes, and a strong cult builds upon around Zarathos. But this gets the attention of Mephisto, who decides that Zarathos has too much of a following and is depriving him and the other lords of hell of souls. Mephisto eventually confronts Zarathos and defeats him by the deceptive use of his soulless pawn, Centrius. And Zarathos is then forced to serve Zarathos for many centuries in the Netherworld, an extra-dimensional land of the dead, sometimes called Hell, though still powerful enough to avoid total confinement. And Mephisto sends his unruly vassal back to Earth on occasions, binding him to human hosts and allowing him to ravage souls on a smaller scale. And eventually he would bond with the human counterpart known as Johnny Blaze. And it's actually kind of funny because there was a retcon to where Zarathos was actually written to be an agent of heaven as opposed to a demon. So there are different writers have different interpretations of Zarathos. Obviously, he's more known. The common perception is that he is a demon from hell, but then he's been rewritten to be an actual agent of heaven. So it's kind of interesting, that duality amongst the character. And it has been said that actually, while the Ghost Rider is in control, Johnny Blaze only influences its decisions to an extent as he takes the backseat in the spirit. And
that's the opposite of Spawn. Where
pretty much.
That's the opposite of Spawn. Yeah. Spawn has that piece of necroplasm that's bonded to his body. The host assumes power over it, and that is more of like, if it reacts, it's like a secondary reaction or kind of like reflex to save him. Whereas Ghost Rider, Johnny Blaze, is somewhat being taken for a ride.
Exactly. And that's exactly what the power of the Ghost Rider depends on who is control of the Ghost Rider, effectively Johnny's body. And obviously Johnny and Zarathos inhabit the same body, and while transformed, Johnny is in control for the majority of the time. But if he loses focus or control of the power of the Ghost Rider, Zarathos will regain control, and that is likely to occur. And it's actually funny because, as stated by Doctor Strange, Johnny Blaze is simply immortal and acts as a built-in safety that severely limits the power of the Ghost Rider. Doctor Strange also stated that when Zarathos takes possession of the Ghost Rider's powers are, for most intents and purposes, boundless and godlike. Johnny Blaze is one of the strongest and most powerful beings on the planet, while the Ghost Rider is, for all intents and purposes, described as boundless in power to the extent where the Ghost Rider was able to defeat Doctor Strange in battle, the Sorcerer Supreme. And he was actually considered to be the Sorcerer Supreme at one point, so it's pretty interesting. And now, Eric, do you want to take it away and go over some of the powers of Ghost Rider to give the people a little bit more insight and hindsight into this character?
Yeah. Again, we're focusing here on Johnny Blaze.
Johnny Blaze, right.
None of the other Ghost Riders really compare to the power that he has shown in the comics. But yeah, like at the higher end of Ghost Rider's powers, like obviously he has his, he can create any weapon out of what's called Hellfire. And he can, like, his actual motorcycle that he uses. So technically he could cut off Spawn's head with his chain because it's created from hell. Again, Spawn has his shroud that clearly protects his neck, so it won't be as easy as we've seen in Spawn comic books. People try, and it's really hard. But nonetheless, his powers do come from hell. But one of the cooler things that he can do is his penance stare. So he actually stares at people with the skull. What was that, Ruben?
I said that's right. I forgot about his stare down, basically.
Yo, the penance stare, which what it does to people is it makes them suffer the emotional pain, all the emotional pain they've ever caused other people. So,
all right, I gotta give it. That is an awesome superpower because that could be very useful in making the world a better place.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It could also be very useful in taking down Al, right? And taking down Spawn, because he has a lot of regret from his former life.
I think it would be a little bit harder for him to take down Spawn in that aspect, only because Spawn at any point in time feels all of the anguish of humanity inside of him. I don't know if there's much more that one person's like anguish is gonna outweigh the entire planet. So I don't think that Ghost Rider would be able to get him, because Spawn is in constant emotional pain.
Right. And I don't think that the Penance there actually works on symbiotes. I know he's had a tough time doing that towards Venom and Carnage and the other symbiotes from the comics. So I don't know how well that would work again, since obviously what Spawn symbiote is called the Seventh House of Levion, or
11th House of K.
11th House of K. Yeah. I thought it was Levion or
House of K. Yeah.
So that's something that and the funny thing is too, I know I was doing Ghost Rider, but this is also another power Jimmy didn't touch upon, and it's important that people are aware. But Spawn has his own version of the Penance there, but dialed up to about infinity, because what he can do is he can make people feel the emotional pain of all those they inflicted on others, but then the souls of those that they've wronged, killed, and done horrible misdeeds to come back to tear your soul apart. So they're not only feeling the emotional, not only feeling the emotional, mental pain, but physical on top of it. So that's also another power a lot of people aren't aware of that Spawn has.
I have another power, but we'll get to that a little bit.
Well, let's get back to a little bit more of Ghost Rider, his powers and his feats and weaknesses. Take it away, Eric.
Yeah, I think I wanted to touch on one of Ghost Rider's weaknesses, because we were talking about how Spawn has to have a weapon from either heaven or hell to kill him. Technically, Ghost Rider only has to have a weapon from heaven to kill him. No weapon from hell can kill Ghost Rider. He can be stabbed. He's essentially immortal. But again, we're talking about Ghost Rider as in the Zarathos, right? So the writer itself versus the host, right? Because if you kill Johnny Blaze, he dies, and the writer just has to find a new host.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's an important thing to note, in that that's his main weakness. But on top of that, it's like anything that's holy affects Ghost Rider.
Exactly.
Like holy water, he can't step foot in a sacred space. He can't, like, there's a pretty cool scene where he meets Daredevil, and Daredevil finds refuge in a church, and Ghost Rider can't follow him in. So it's really interesting seeing that I know Spawn, like, literally he goes to the gates of heaven, and he can step foot in all these different places, whereas Ghost Rider steps foot in there and he like gets consumed by hell, and it just shoots him back out.
To counter that, there is Spawn's weakness is this area called the Dead Zone. Okay. And it's a small patch of Earth that's like Heaven's domain, and they call it Green's World.
Okay.
Yeah, and I believe it's in a certain part of an alley. Oh, and yeah, it's in a patch of an alley, because things at an alley. So Ghost Rider were to corner Spawn in Green's World, he would kill him. So there is that one area that's like his kryptonite, I guess you might want to say. Green's World is kryptonite.
Yeah. And also very similar to Spawn, Ghost Rider, it is implied that we've never seen the upper limits of his powers. Exactly. Because Johnny Blaze, Robbie Reyes, even what's her name, Alejandra, a few others, like, they never let go of the demon far enough for them to like kill. It was implied in, I think it was World War Hulk, where he was about to kill the Hulk, and Johnny Blaze pulled back and was like, "No, you can't kill the Hulk." It wasn't his fault. I think at that the plot point in there was that it was the Illuminati that had done something, and it was blamed on the Hulk. So he was able to pull back because he could see, he can smell sin. So he could tell that the Hulk hadn't done anything wrong, that Bruce hadn't done anything wrong. So he couldn't take that step to kill him. What was that?
Man, where was that power at in Civil War?
Yeah.
Which is crazy because that's like, for people to have a little bit more context, that's actually one of the most powerful versions of the Hulk, where the Hulk was just on a rampage and was just out for blood. So the fact that Ghost Rider almost defeated him and killed him, it really is a testament to somewhat of his true power, and that he was still holding back because Zarathos wanted to do it, but then Johnny could sense that the Hulk wasn't guilty of whatever it was the Illuminati did. So he had said, no, Pulp, like, he's not deserving of being killed, or he's not deserving, the punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So I guess if you're going to the assumption here that Ghost Rider does feel like Spawn fits the crime, who knows to what level Johnny Blaze would go, right? Would he just completely let go and let the demon fight? Regardless, we have seen Spawn kill demons before. And angels, yes. So,
and Satan and God.
Spawn can actually step into a church. There's actually scenes of Spawn doing battle in church, and he goes to brood on crosses all the time.
He does.
Yeah.
So I have a question. If I walked up to Ghost Rider with a cross and did the whole vampire and the whole power of cross compels you, would he just disappear, or like disassemble or dismantle himself or something?
Back away or disassemble, and Spawn would look at you like, "What the hell is wrong with you?"
Yeah, what's happening?
So I could defeat Ghost Rider then, technically.
You could defeat Ghost Rider.
So well, let's get into now that we have these characters' origins, their backstory, we know more about them and their powers and skill sets. Let's get into the debate to see which of them would reign supreme as the true king of hell. Spawn versus Ghost Rider, who wins? Who do you guys got? Who is all the money on? I want to know. Go.
Okay. All right. Spawn actually did ascend the throne of hell in the comic books. He actually knocked out the devil and was at the throne of hell and actually controlled it. So he
so did Johnny.
So did Johnny. Thank you.
Just saying.
He's reached a top tier point. Here's another. This is a perfect time to mention this. There's this thing called Legion, and supposedly there are 6,000 souls within that Spawn can possess. And according to the Detective Twitch in the comic books, he theorizes that these 6,000 souls that are within him are all people who were either killed or died at the same hour that Al Simmons did. He can retain their knowledge, all of their experience. He can cause their souls to manifest themselves physically as like kind of like foot soldier hell spawns. They can aid him in combat. So he actually has the power of 6,000 people within him, and he uses the best, like the people who are the strongest warriors. And there is actually an event in the comic books where all of his legion was knocked out, and there were only 12 souls left within him. But it didn't matter because the 12 souls that he had are 12 of like the strongest, most battle-tested warriors that you could dream up of. So Spawn has Legion within him. I don't know if Ghost Rider has Legion within him.
Ghost Rider doesn't have Legion, but he can control Celestials. So I guess he could create an army of Celestials to fight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who do you guys say? Let's get into the debate right now. Who do you guys got?
Spawn.
I think there's so many different versions of this. But I think I'm talking about like at their weakest, not their weakest, at their like first inception of Ghost Rider versus first inception of Spawn. I would take Ghost Rider.
Okay,
interesting.
Fair enough.
Because if you're talking about at their max powers, I mean, you have Divine Spawn, who's essentially like above God.
Exactly.
He's like up there with, I think in Spawn's comics they call it Mother. Right? Mother is like the overall being that creates all the universes. Yeah. He's like under it.
Yeah, God and the devil in the Spawn universe are not the supreme. They're like little kids that fight back and forth, and there's a creator that's above that.
Yeah. So I guess if you're comparing it to like Marvel, he'd be up there with like the one above all.
The Beyonder, maybe, or would he be above the Beyonder, right? Or
something like that. So I guess at their max powers, I think the max power that Ghost Rider ever got to was in like Uncanny Avengers, where he defeats the whole Avengers and he becomes like the size of Galactus and like ridiculous. I even at that point, I'm pretty sure like that Divine Spawn would kill him, or would be able to kill him because at that point he does have weapons from heaven.
Yeah,
Spawn. Yeah,
I thought it was interesting, this debate, and it's funny you had said that because. And that was something me and Jimmy had a conversation about and said in the previous episode that we had filmed for this, was that Spawn in his original incarnation, he was just a man from hell in a symbiote who still relied upon his training as a human, relying on the guns, the explosives. He uses chains. This chains was about the only power he would use on a consistent basis, but all the other powers and matter manipulation, teleportation,
most of that
changing his density, that's all stuff that he would not use before.
But in all fairness, Eric does have a point, because so do you, is that when Spawn started off, especially like if you read the early issues of his comics, almost all of his fighting and his battles are done using his skills as a Black Ops operative. It's not until Cogliostro. It's not until Cogliostro kind of comes in. It's like his Yoda that teaches him the extent of how powerful he is. So Spawn at the beginning doesn't take advantage of it, because he can't even fathom the extent of his powers and his abilities. So in the beginning, but I do think at their maximum, at their highest power, Spawn would probably lord over Ghost Rider.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you guys. It's funny too. Let me get into this. So the poll, what started this was we were running a poll, and that's the whole thing with Superhero Showdown, where you guys vote on who would win. The first one we did was the male members of the Bat family versus the TMNT. You guys voted for the TMNT. I think it was like 54 to 56%, something like that. But for this, it was crazy overwhelming what the people voted for. So in a battle between Spawn and Ghost Rider, 71% said Spawn to 29% for Ghost Rider. So it was pretty overwhelming in that sense, that it wasn't even like 60 to 40%. It was most people.
That's overwhelming, considering Ghost Rider comes from Marvel, who is a much more mainstream, well-known comic book company than Image. And that makes those.
I think it goes in a sense because most people don't really know Spawn, but I think it's that fact of he was just very cool looking, and the way Todd McFarlane would draw him. And then the movie came out. Those nostalgic 90s kids who played the Spawn video game for the Super Nintendo. I think it's more so with just the image of Spawn. They look at Spawn and they think, okay, Ghost Rider, he looks cool. But Spawn, most people would assume like Spawn is probably one of the coolest looking comic book characters. So I think most people aren't aware of his power set, what he can truly do. I mean, heck, we had to do a lot of research for this to even truly begin to understand and fathom. Wait a minute. He has matter manipulation. He can change his density. He can stop time. Like he has his own version of the penance there where it's dialed up to infinity. And I think this is more so. I think that was more voting for what people voted for this poll was related to that. But I think they're pretty right on that aspect, because the only real battle I can see where Ghost Rider would win is if he just or even would even come close, not even win, but just have somewhat of a chance, is if Johnny would just completely take a backseat and let Zarathos take over completely. But I know that Johnny has his qualms about doing that for that sake of he doesn't know how far he's going to be lost, or if Zarathos just takes over completely and he's going to lose his soul in the process, or he's not going to be around anymore because Zarathos would just completely take over his body. So that's just the only thing I think. Johnny, I don't know if he'd be willing to go to those extremes to do what he has to and let Zarathos completely resume control. But even just in general with their powers and their skill sets, I think it's just a little bit of a cakewalk, and it's not a fair comparison that Spawn would pretty much annihilate Ghost Rider in all fairness, in all respects, honestly.
I want to hear what Ruben has to say on this.
No, I mean, you guys pretty much all said it all already, dude. Like, before he even got his powers, he already had that list that you already gave out there. And then the same thing that Eric is saying, though, if it were the original, old school Ghost Rider, all out, like, without a doubt, I think I would go Ghost Rider. But with the way things continued moving forward from when things first started, without a doubt, Spawn, like, hands down, he would definitely whoop his butt. You know what I'm saying? He like I said, he has that background story already with his tactical training and all that, and just adding powers just makes it even more. And then yet, Ghost Rider Johnny, he was what you call it, he was not scared to break records, trying to do all these stunts. He was
in all fairness, that's pretty badass. I still don't think it's badass as the world's top government trained assassin, though. That's just me.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, because like I said, yeah, like Johnny has that side of him, I guess it's more that personality he has where like that's why he did stunts. He wasn't scared of anything. Like, he wasn't scared of death. So imagine when he got those powers. I mean, like you say, he wants to keep his soul and all that. He doesn't want to go on that deep end, like Nick was saying, and I agree with that 100%. Like, it's not all him. It's not all him on his own right now. With Johnny, it's with the demon that he has inside him. So he has to compromise. And I think Spawn, yeah, he knows what he's done. He has that bad history as well, but he's growing. But if it were just to be an all-out fight, without a doubt, I think, yeah, hands down, Spawn. For sure, Spawn. I like Ghost Rider a lot. I ain't gonna lie, I really do. Look, I have the Robbie Reyes. I like Robbie Reyes' car. That's what I like about Robbie Reyes when I say when I mentioned Ghost Rider. But yeah, all for sure, Johnny's gonna be the number one.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a second.
Pun. All puns.
Yeah. So
pun. Devil's.
I'm gonna go.
We're talking about the Warriors from Hell.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting talking about like Divine Spawn and all that, but I think that's just a one-off story and not the way we see Spawn the most. And with Spawn, if you read the comics, he loses to Overkill. He almost loses to Overkill twice.
Was early
and that was on technicalities because on both of those, his circuits broke. Overkill circuits broke. If it weren't for that, he would have won. He would have cut off Spawn's head.
But in the early ones, the more famous, infamous Overkill battle was very early in Spawn's career. To be honest, he was not that was when he was not really taking advantage of his powers, when he was just trying to rely on his government training.
Yeah, I think still, even within the timeline, Ghost Rider at that point would destroy Spawn.
Okay, I'll give you that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see Ghost Rider out here losing to Iron Man like that. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, that won't happen.
And,
I mean, Overkill would be more like, I mean, obviously I know they don't
like
have really their version. Yeah, they don't have their version of Cyborg, but it would be somewhat Marvel version of Cyborg, essentially.
Really quick, a little bit of piece of information. Overkill, this character that Todd McFarlane created, you know who assisted him in coming up with this character?
Can I say it?
Yeah.
Stan Lee.
Yep, Stanley is.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
In a drawing session.
So this
cool.
is partially a Stan Lee creation because Todd McFarlane had, with his relationship at Marvel, talked to him and they came up with the villain together. So if there's anything about it that's Marvel-ish, you know why now.
Yeah. That's funny.
Just it's because you guys even brought up that whole thing. I didn't even really mention that fact that he, even just as a human, he has all this incredible. Al Simmons just had all this incredible training. He was a Black Ops specialist, one of the best combatants in his universe, and espionage and tactics and strategies, and all of that really highlights his strengths at Spawn to where so much to the point he didn't even have to rely on those powers. Well, I mean, he didn't understand them, but to that point, he was still incredibly effective. Yeah, he lost to Overkill early in his career a couple times, yes, but when you compare all of that and then his incredible control over his powers, the only real option Johnny has is just to overwhelm him with raw power. And even then, too, I think if Zarathos was to take over complete control, I don't really know if it would really be that much of a difference because Spawn would just find another way to defeat him because of his tactical mindset.
Now Bolger can even control Spawn. The devil himself, what makes you think Zarathos would be able to? Yeah.
It's been like, well, that was more the only thing. Like we just have to match him in raw power. But even then, Spawn isn't some brawler type of guy who has to rely on his fighting skills. He has a very keen tactical mindset. So even then too, that would also be something that would be hard for Ghost Rider to get over and would have to just completely overwhelm him in raw power, but I don't even see that happening for that sake.
Al Simmons also saved the president from a bullet.
And he
Interesting.
And he had a crossover with Batman, which kind of funny.
Yeah.
We were talking about those Batman parallels, so that's pretty cool in itself too.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence that those ended up being two of my top 3 superheroes.
Yeah.
What I'm drawn to, so I don't think that's necessarily a coincidence that they ended up being that way.
Exactly.
Here's another question: who would win in life while they were both still humans?
Ghost Rider.
No,
is that even really
I'm just
a rhetorical question?
I'm just trying to push this.
Without their powers, Al would win in life.
Yeah.
He would still stomp.
Dude, Johnny Blaze had such a tragic backstory, way more tragic than Al's. Like, this dude literally lost 2 dads.
Yep.
And
2 months.
Taking the same story and saying that the demons never responded to their whatever magic they're trying to do. I mean, I would have a tragic story in that he like legit dies, right? And he got killed by the CIA. But Johnny Blaze is like, there's cancer, there's mom leaving you, there's parents dying, there's like all these other things. Like, it's just way more tragic of a backstory.
And then
you're
also
by that point, this dude wanted to be dead. Like, it was crazy.
And let's not even take into the fact that he was shacking up with the stepsister, and that's gotta cause some psychological issues, I would say.
Yeah.
No one talks about that, but
I like how Eric tries to like rush past that. Like, yeah, let's move on.
It's ridiculous.
I'm just saying, but okay, are we all in a unanimous agreement that Spawn would win this battle?
No, Ghost Rider would win.
I think Eric is going to be the outlier here.
Yeah. In a vacuum, putting Ghost Rider not at his strongest with Spawn not at his strongest, Ghost Rider would win. Okay. Simply just I'm just looking at their weaknesses.
Okay.
Literally, Ghost Rider, you need a weapon from heaven to kill him. And just with what you have, Ghost Rider can pull weapons literally, like he can just pull weapons out of himself, and they're made of hell. And his weapons can kill Spawn.
No, you're right. I was like, I don't think that Ghost Rider would be able to beat Spawn, but if there was a character that could beat Spawn, it would be Ghost Rider, just by the virtue of the fact that his weapons come from the only thing that can actually defeat him. So if there was somebody who could
That's fair.
It's
That's
Ghost
true.
Rider.
Yeah,
that's fair. I can agree with that.
So are we 3-1 then?
3-1 on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3-1 on this.
It's like the poll. I think the poll came out pretty.
The poll,
that's true.
You guys were pretty.
You guys hit
about 3/4, I would say.
So turns out you guys were right, and Spawn is the winner and is the true supreme king of hell.
Yeah,
so
but the poll remembers, folks. We're gonna crown Spawn the winner, but look, this is all just opinion. This is us just messing around.
No, it's fact.
Yeah,
it's fact. 100% fact.
Okay, fact. All right, fine.
He's gonna edit that part out. So
I gotta give out. Ghost Rider was actually one of my dad's favorite comic book characters, and my dad got me into comics, so that's actually I do have a soft spot for it just because of that.
Yeah.
But I feel like Spawn is to me what Ghost Rider probably was to my dad, just because
exactly
my time. And, I grew up on the movie, which it hasn't aged well, and I don't like it that much anymore. But I give the movie credit because at that age when you're a kid, it's there's Ghost Rider. At that age when you're a kid, seeing that Spawn movie, even though it's bad, there's something cool about it. It got me into the mythology, and even though I kind of outgrew the movie, I don't really care for it as much. It is what made me a fan of that character, so I'm glad that it exists because it brought so much attention to that character in the mainstream. And let's not forget that fantastic HBO animated series that was on for 3 seasons.
HBO. Yep.
If you guys have HBO Max, make sure you guys check it out. It is one of those gems that a lot of people aren't aware of. And this was made in the late 90s. Fantastic voice work from the legendary Keith David as Spawn, who is the true Spawn in my opinion. But going back to what Jimmy,
go on. Going
back to what you said, this was actually a really hard debate because these are 2 characters I really like, and I actually kind of got into them around the same time. Yeah, the Spawn movie came out in the '97 when I was 6 years old, but I didn't really understand too much of this character. And then Ghost Rider came out in 2007 when I was a little bit older and more aware of things and able to relate to things a little bit better. So even though the movie wasn't that great and it was Nicolas Cage not being good Nicolas Cage, but just seeing that character, just seeing that trailer of him diving off of the building and using his chain to latch on and drive down the building, that was just cool in a live action setting. And I really started my love and my fascination with this character. So putting him in a brawl with Spawn, where I was already adamant from the beginning, not being biased or anything, but just I don't see a way that this character would beat Spawn. So this was actually a hard debate and hard for me to do because it had to offset my deep love and appreciation and respect for this character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
But make sure you guys check more in the future. We're going to be doing more superhero showdowns. The next one we're going to be doing is the Joker versus the Green Goblin, which is two characters that parallel each other. And it's funny because the Green Goblin is called Marvel's Joker. And I think that's a very fitting kind of comparison. So we're going to be doing that probably in the next coming weeks. Make sure you guys check out that poll, and we'll post an update when we're going to be posting it so you guys don't miss it. So
a question for you guys before we go. Spawn and Ghost Rider both look really cool. They're pretty badass. What is it about the superheroes from hell that just makes them look so much cooler than a lot of normal superheroes? What is it?
I don't know.
I think it's because they have that edginess and that darkness associated to them that we already find prevalent in a lot of characters. Obviously, you have Batman, that's probably the most prevalent, that really dives into those darker aspects. And some of it, especially when you watch the Tim Burton movies, really playing in a whole gothic atmosphere. I think that's just what people relate to, and especially when you get more into their tragic backstories and that stuff that you can definitely relate to, even though they have all this overwhelming power. That's just stuff where you see the humanistic qualities of these characters. But also, they just look really freaking cool. Like, you have a dude on a freaking motorcycle with chains and a flaming freaking skull, and then you have Spawn perched on top of the crosses with the freaking big old cape. I'm calling it a cape. I'm not calling it a shroud. It's a cape. Hashtag it's a cape.
Asking me that, I guess I would go with the term girls or women would go. It's that bad boy look.
Oh God, I wasn't even going there. I wasn't even going there.
There's some truth to it. There's some truth to it.
It's the simplest way to explain it. They look so awesome, bro. I'm not like attracted to them or anything like that because I'm saying
no lies. You have all those comics behind you. You're attracted to them.
Dude, that's why I have.
That looks like I see attraction all behind you.
Artwork and all that stuff, like, bro. I just they look pretty awesome, and it's not the usual any superhero look. You know what I'm saying? It's especially for Ghost Rider with his leathery looking self and shit with the chains and all that. I think that's pretty awesome with the freaking flaming
super cool.
Now that's badass.
For me, what attracts me to these two characters is I think the mythos behind it, of the like religious mythos, right? Mm-hmm. Like me, like I'm religious, I'm Catholic, so seeing like churches and demons and angels portrayed in that way, it's just so cool to me. Yep. And I see it. It's just so interesting to see that. See their like juxtapositions of like a hero who's like good or an anti-hero, but as a demon, as in the using hellfire and using those. I think that's super cool, and I think it's really interesting. Also, obviously, I'm on the video game podcast as well. Spawn, the story of Spawn and their fights between angels and demons is actually one of the inspirations for the video game Diablo. And the fight during Diablo 1, 2, and 3, and how it's a whole fight between heaven and hell, and the protagonist is in the middle of it all. And that's actually came from inspiration from Spawn's mythos. So that's what I find interesting. Like like I don't know if you guys ever watched on Hulu the Hellstrom series, which is based off Marvel.
I've been wanting to watch that.
Yeah, it's really cool. You got Damien Hellstrom, and obviously in the comic books, he works a lot with Ghost Rider. You see a lot of Mephisto. I find all those stories really interesting. All the stories of hell and how it's like separated into different areas in Marvel. So I just think people are kind of attracted to that stuff, and it's just really interesting. Also in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I don't know how far you guys got into that show, but you do see Ghost Rider Robbie Reyes in there.
Robbie
And,
Reyes.
Yeah, and they portray him also like with the skull and all the hellfire and all that's really cool. So
it was awesome.
I mean that's what attracts me to it, at least. I just think their backstories and just kind of the intrigue of evil juxtaposed with the goodness of a hero, right?
What's interesting about what you said is the religious elements of it and the storytelling is that most superhero mythology takes its inspiration from very old beliefs like Greek mythology, which is something that people used to take seriously, but nobody does now. It's interesting because that's where the majority of superhero mythology tries to like imitate or derive a lot of its inspiration from, whereas Ghost Rider and Spawn relate to beliefs that people currently hold. They're not like outdated beliefs. They're beliefs that are like, they're beliefs that are still relevant into today's society. Whereas Zeus, Ares, we all look at that as just good forms of storytelling. So I also think that's a pretty interesting aspect.
Definitely.
I also find it interesting because like my sister, she likes Lucifer, like the show and those stories and those comics. And a lot of times they ask us like, oh, you guys are Christian. Why do you guys like watch those things? Why do you read Spawn? Why do you read these? I'm like, it's just interesting. It's really good storytelling. Like it's not mocking and sometimes, sure, it'll mock the religion, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't appreciate the art, right? The art behind it and these stories that they're creating around all of that. It's really cool, and I find it super interesting.
Definitely.
I think the important thing, I'm not trying to get too pretentious, but I think the important thing about art is to experience different points of view.
Exactly. Yes.
Definitely.
I think that's important to it too.
Definitely.
Yeah. And both these characters do an excellent job at that.
Definitely.
Cool.
For sure. And for you people out there, if you don't know, my bad, Nick, if you don't know, there is a Spawn universe coming out soon, especially with Todd McFarlane coming out with his own comic book soon. I'm pretty sure next month it's gonna be a one shot, and then that's gonna be supposedly the opening to the Spawn universe. So whether it's comics, animated movies, expect a lot of Todd McFarlane stuff coming out soon.
Awesome.
And then he's still signed on to direct the live action Spawn movie that stars going to be starring Jamie Foxx as Spawn, Al Simmons, and I think Jeremy Renner is going to be Twitch, right?
Which makes no sense to me because Twitch is a really scrawny, gaunt character, and is fucking act.
Exactly.
So, I don't know, but
they had their own series too.
Yeah, Sam and Twitch had their own
series.
Sam and
Twitch, yeah.
But good stuff to come.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. That's going to be, I think, the first superhero film that is going to be directed by the actual creator of that character. So that's going to be something very interesting to see, and we'll see how all of his decades of experience as a comic book writer, how that translates to being a director of a feature film. We'll check it out. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us, especially for this very special segment of Superhero Showdown. We appreciate you guys, and we hope you liked our analysis and deep dive into the two titans and kings of hell, Spawn versus Ghost Rider. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys are following us on Heroes and Mutants podcast on IG, and we'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much. Signing out.